Hey, what's up guys? Fancy Fan Dan here with my reaction from Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3. So before listening to this, be sure to give it a look because there will be spoilers ahead. But now that you've seen it, let's get into it. Alright, first off, my initial reactions and feelings about the episode. Really enjoyed this episode as a whole. Don't really think it had that great of an ending, especially how the ending relates to the rest of the story. But I mean, damn, held me on the edge of my seat all the way through. There were some really great fight sequences, especially Arya on the battlements of Winterfell, doing her crazy spear shit, Grey Worm doing all of his crazy spear shit too. I mean, really, just love the crazy spear shit. Great throwback to Oberyn in season 3, I think it was. A lot of great fight scenes, especially when the White Walkers were coming in, just absolutely savaging the Unsullied's wall that they had made when they were defending their retreat. I mean, just so many great moments when the Dothraki were running in, and you just watch one light wink out after another until just the silence fell. I mean, damn, there was a ton of suspense the whole time. The way everything fell to what looked like an unstoppable march of death. It was just absolutely crazy. And really, I mean, if it didn't fill you with a sense of dread, I don't think we were watching the same episode. When the Night King raised all those soldiers at the end, whew, I mean, it was just wild. But that being said, there were a few things I didn't really like all that much. I mean, it was cool seeing all the main characters like Sam or Brienne or Grey Worm getting overrun. You know, that was really cool to see. You thought that they were definitely going to die. I was just kind of disappointed that none of them did die. I mean, sure, you know, Theon and Jorah fell, but at the end of the day, those are some characters that maybe they didn't really have that much left in the tank as far as story could really go. I mean, think about it. Jorah, after this fight, you know, once Dany gets her throne, there's really not much left for the lad. And Theon, I mean, Theon's fucked up, you know, so if he lived it through this, I mean, realistically, what's he gonna do? Just hang out with his sister on the Iron Islands, walling about the fact that he doesn't have a dick anymore? I mean, I don't think that really would have went too well. So I think it was best for him to go out as a hero. But people like Brienne, Grey Worm, or Tormund, or like all those characters, you know that they have a lot left in the tank. Like, you could really picture a happily ever after for them. So for that to be ripped away by the physical embodiment of death, I felt like that would have been really cool. But oh well, I guess what we got is what we got. But anyways, just want to say, really enjoyed the episode all the way through up until the last 5 minutes or so. I mean, as an episode of TV, it was fantastic. A lot of people didn't like the lighting, but if you ask me, it really created a sense of tension. It was really like, it felt like a real battle. Like, it was all chaos and confusion. You really didn't know what was going on. The only time when that really bothered me was in the crazy dragon fight with Jon, Dany, and the Night King. Only because every time a dragon came in, I was like, who is this? Who's on this dragon? Is this Jon? Is this the Night King? I always thought it was the Night King, and then it would flash to the rider and be like, oh, it's Dany actually. So that was a bit confusing for the viewer, I guess. But outside of that, I really liked how dark it was. Really set the tone. I mean, you know, not to mention the incredible score. Got to give them a big shout out for that. But yeah, let's get into the bigger points here of the episode. I mean, the first thing that everyone's talking about, and you knew this was gonna be in here, was the way the Night King died, and like the implication that has on for the rest of the story and the story that's happened up to this point. Let's be realistic here. I don't think anyone thought Arya was going to be the one to do the deed. Maybe you would think, you know, Game of Thrones, they like to subvert expectations, so maybe it's not going to be Jon or Dany, but for it just to be Arya, they could be coming out of nowhere and doing it, kind of rubbed a lot of people, myself included, the wrong way. First of all, it didn't even make sense. You know, Arya was trapped in that room with the Whites all over the place. I mean, the Whites had absolutely swarmed the castle. You could not move an inch without one of them doing their demented scream at you. So for her to slip out of that room and make it all the way to the God's Woods, it doesn't make any sense. Jon was trying to do the same thing and was getting stifled at every turn, but apparently she just slipped through without a single undead eye turning her away. So, you know, hats off to her for that, I guess. But then, when she finally gets to the God's Wood, look at it! There's like a giant swarm of zombies just surrounding Bran and Theon. I mean, had to be like 1,000 of them in a perfect circle. So what? She just like crawled underground. I mean, how did she do that? The only explanation I could possibly think of is that the whites, they're kind of like robots almost. They just receive commands. They're not like self-aware. So maybe all the White Walkers were kind of just like had them turned off or something. So then, you know, if that's the case, then yeah, I guess she could just kind of slip through without anybody noticing. But then she gets to the end of the circle. There's a solid 10 feet at least between the edge of the circle and the center of it, where Bran and the Night King are. So now she's got to cover that time before anyone reacts or does anything, which I don't know, I guess amazingly she does. I mean, that Superman leap she did, I really don't know what the in-world explanation is for that. I mean, that was some straight up Michael Jordan shit, jumping from the free throw line. I mean, that didn't make any sense. And then, you know, he grabs her, she stabs him. Oh, it just happens to be in the spot where the dragon glass dagger was pressed in thousands of years ago. I mean, fine. That's the way they decided to do it. I just don't think it makes a damn bit of sense. But even moving past how it didn't make sense, I mean, there's a lot of implications this has for the series as a whole that I don't think anyone's going to be that big of a fan of. The first thing is, what about Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised, all that prophecy? I bet Rhaegar is feeling like a pretty big fool right now, considering he basically caused a giant war and more or less the end of his line, or at least a perceived end of his line, and his own death and the love of his life's death to have the prince who was promised. But the only thing is, the prince who was promised that he bore, you know, wasn't the one to deal the final blow. Wasn't all that necessary. If Dany came in and kind of conquered everything anyways and had the dragons, well, I guess Dany wouldn't have been around if he didn't start that whole war. So I guess, you know, in an indirect sense, he had to do what he had to do for the story to get this way. But I mean, still, is there a prince who was promised now? Is all that thrown out the door? Is Arya the prince who was promised? What the fuck? What the fuck? I don't even know. Why would you even throw all this prophecy in the mix if you're just gonna do it like that? Personally, I agree that it would have been too predictable for Jon to just kind of go in and one-on-one duel the Night King and slay him that way, but they didn't have to do it like that. They could have still had Jon get involved and someone else deal the final blow. I would have loved to have seen Jon get a one-on-one sword fight with the Night King, lose, because obviously the Night King has overwhelming strength. I mean, look at his javelin toss. That dude's out there setting records with that shit. So I would have loved to see him, you know, fight and lose, and then maybe like Dany comes in and tries to save him, and now he's gonna kill the dragon, and then while all that crazy shit's going on, then Arya comes in, slides in with the dagger behind, very assassin-like. You know, that would have made a lot of sense to me. I think it would have been a lot more satisfying. The way this was done, it just felt very sudden, unexpected for the sake of being unexpected, and worst of all, just didn't make much sense at all. I've read a lot online, you know, some people think that maybe Arya is Azor Ahai now, especially in that subreddit, Arya for the Iron Throne. People are saying that this could be a possibility, but if you ask me, I think the show writers just kind of threw all that away. I mean, first of all, she's not really a princess. I mean, I guess you can consider the Stark line a royal line, because before the Targaryens came in, all the kingdoms independently ruled over their territory instead of being lords over it. But that's a pretty tenuous connection, especially when you're dealing with two people of an actual royal line, and one of them who's of both of those lines. So just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Secondly, she's not a leader. A prince is supposed to be a leader. Arya is anything but that. I mean, she's a killer, don't get me wrong. She's a great assassin. She's super badass. Love the character, but definitely not a leader. And last, I mean, it's pretty lame for there to be all this hype for so long. I mean, Stannis is the prince who was promised. Oh, Jon died and came back. He must be the prince who was promised. Ah, but Dany was born amongst the salt and flames with the dragons. It's gotta be her. No. None of that's true. You don't know if there's a prince who was promised. For all we know, it was all a bunch of bollocks. But, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Think about it. It makes no sense. And it's very disappointing on top of it. But moving past that, I've seen a lot of people complain as well about the implications this has for the rest of the series. Everyone seems to be really pissed that Cersei is the final enemy. They're calling her a cartoon character, just a generic evil villain who doesn't make any sense and who just kind of lucks into where she is. But if you ask me, I'm very glad that Cersei is the final enemy. People think she's a terrible villain, but I think she's an awesome character. I think that she's a great villain. And in my next video, I'm going to be addressing why I hope that Cersei is actually the winner of the Iron Throne. I think it would definitely be the best ending. It would definitely help make up for this silliness that sort of occurred in this episode. Alright, now I just kind of want to talk about a few other parts of the episode that I wasn't a big fan of. Didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I addressed that because even though this is a fantasy series, it's always sort of prided itself on being very grounded in reality in the reality that it sets up. And so when things happen that don't really make any sense, that's always pretty disappointing for me. So, for instance, right out the gate, you're looking at their formation to defend Winterfell against this giant horde, and the first thing, everyone's got to be thinking it, like, this makes absolutely no sense. Why the hell would you meet a giant charge of people who vastly outnumber you and who are absolutely crazy, berserkers that the whites are? Why would you just meet that head on with a completely unsupported small cavalry charge? That doesn't make any sense. No, what should have been going on, and what clearly didn't happen, was to thin their numbers down while they had charged with the ranged attacks. You have these giant trebuchets firing these flaming, whatever they're flaming whatever. Oil, was it? Giant heated rocks? I really don't know. Shit was on fire, though, I can tell you that much. And they did a single volley. Those things probably had to kill 20 whites per rock or whatever they're throwing. And they did it one time. Could have had them inside, could have had them constantly going, could have killed hundreds, if not thousands of whites like that. No, just one volley. That's all we're going to do. And then with the archers, we got all the whites hanging out, standing still behind this ring of fire. Are we going to thin through their numbers and pick them off? No, I think it would be better off if we waited for them to start seizing the wall and get close enough to the point where we can use the arrows. I think that would make a lot more sense. So much stuff just didn't make a lick of sense. They had all the Unsullied standing beyond the defensive that they made, battlements. I don't really know what those called. They had the spears more or less shoved into the ground, preventing them from assaulting too quickly. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that you're going to want to have some people standing beyond that to meet the first charge, try and thin through their numbers, but that should only be a very brief encounter. If we were being really strategic about it, you'd probably want the Unsullied lined up in some kind of phalanx to meet the initial charge, and then have the Dothraki come in and sort of break that up to give them some space to retreat with a flanking assault. And then you would probably want everyone to fall back after that with the arrows and the trebuchets covering them to get inside the wall, and then to try and do a final hold at the wall. That makes the most sense. But that is so far from what they did. Instead, they basically was just lambs to the slaughter, just leaving everyone out in the open. No rhyme or reason, no strategy, just watching them fall one by one to this horde of death. That was unfortunate for me. I like cool military epic scenes like that. I like it when they do a cool strategy that makes sense, and this was just not that. And don't get me wrong, like I said earlier, the episode was very well executed. I really liked the way they made it seem like just everything was going to shit every second of it. I loved seeing just the hope just continuously dying and dying. It was very, very tense situation. It's the only way to put it. Very incredibly executed, but would have been nice if it made a little more sense. Moving past that, like I kind of said earlier, it was pretty lame seeing all the main characters get overrun. Then you cut away, think, oh, this dude's dead, and then you come back and they're kind of in the same situation again, like, oh, they're about to be overrun again. And that just really breaks the not the suspension of disbelief, but it really does break the tension. Did not enjoy that at all. What was going on? Why did they have to do that? Didn't make any sense. You had Brienne and Jaime. You flash to them. It looks like a really heartfelt scene. Brienne's going down. Jaime goes in for the save, and then the reverse happens later on, and you're thinking one of these guys has to die. And I was kind of hoping Brienne would die because I think Jaime has some critical stuff left to do in the plot. But no, neither of them goes down. Sam is still alive. Don't ask me how. Saw him on the ground, covered in dead bodies and crying for 3 scenes. So I don't know. Maybe the whites don't like the smell of piggy. I don't really know what it is, but That was unfortunate. Really thought Sam was gonna die. That would be a really heartfelt loss, and I don't really think he's gonna bring much to the table plot-wise from now on. I mean, would have felt bad for Gilly and Little Sam, but gotta make sacrifices for a great story, right? Grey Worm was another one that I was actually really hoping was gonna die, especially after his conversation with Missandei. I thought it would make a lot of sense for him to kind of give like a noble sacrifice here. That would have been really heartfelt, but no, the only ones who die are Jorah and Theon, and like I said, they really don't have a potential happily ever after waiting for them, so I think that's why a lot of people really weren't that sad to see them go. I mean, Theon's life is just absolutely brutal. For him to go down in a heroic way, that's honestly best case scenario for the lad. I wouldn't want to be in his position at all. Jorah, yeah, I mean, he could have, grown old next to Dany or whatever, but, I mean, he loved her. You're not going to want to just hang out with the woman you love while she's with another dude, ruling her kingdom, and you're just kind of on the side. I mean, he's not hand to the king at this point, so really, what's his role with her? I don't even know. Go back to House of Mormont. Which, that actually reminds me that Lyanna death scene, that was okay. I have mixed feelings about that. I did think it was cool how she killed the giant and she's so little, that David versus Goliath aspect. I did think that was cool, but there was kind of, at the same time, a feeling in me that thought, again, the realistic aspect of the show is getting really compromised left and right, and this was another one of those scenes. I think it would have done a lot for the show in bringing back that grounded in reality feeling if, maybe for the first charge, the giant comes in, sweeps her aside, and she kind of gets up. She runs at him to charge, and then we're reminded, yeah, this is actually reality. Giant grabs her and, bites her in half or some crazy shit. I think that would have been a lot cooler and a lot better. I mean, it was nice, seeing her triumph over the giant, going out like the warrior that she was, but just not very realistic again. And now, the last big point, the other point that's got everyone talking. What the fuck is up with my man Bran? What is he doing? This doesn't make any sense. He's just like an ordinary crippled kid at this point. I mean, he's just hanging out in the Godswood. What does he do? He goes into some crows to watch? What do you think this is? Some kind of TV show? You can't just watch this shit, Bran. There's crazy shit going on all over the place, and you have magic powers. You gotta do something, dog. Really, no idea. Could have warged into a dragon. Could have warged into Ghost. Maybe he can warg into a white or a White Walker and do some incognito shit. I mean, I don't know, find the polar bear and warg into that. I mean, do something, Bran. Don't just warg into some crows and watch. I'm really hoping that in the coming episodes, Bran explains that maybe he was going back in time to find some missing key that he could impact the past somehow to bring them to a situation where they win against the White Walkers, some kind of Doctor Strange shit in the Avengers, looking into the future, what's the situation where we can win. Hoping that that's the case, but after this episode, I'm pretty sure I know the MO of the show writers at this point in the game, and what you see is what you get, and basically what you got with Bran was just a kid sitting in a chair waiting to die and then miraculously being saved by a 100-pound assassin who pulled off a Michael Jordan jump after turning invisible and sifting through a crowd of thousands of bloodthirsty zombies. So, yeah, take that as you will. Again, does a lot to kind of compromise the realism of the show. I know it's fantasy, but they did ground it in reality a lot, and this does really compromise that. But beyond that, you gotta wonder, what was the point of Bran's whole plot line at this point? I mean, we've been following this, I think, since season 2 or 3, him, looking for the Three-Eyed Raven, training with the Three-Eyed Raven. He had to be ready for the last battle. Blood Raven said it was so. He said he wasn't ready. He said he had so much to do. Bran thought he wasn't ready. Ready for what? Ready for what? That is the question that is on everyone's mind. What did he have to be ready for? He literally just sat in a chair. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's going to add a lot to the plot that Bran reveals that, R plus L equals J. That does reveal a lot for the plot, but I think that we could have gotten that without a massive side story of a kid hiding in a cave with a tree man. I think that maybe there could have just been a little more explained in the Maester book that Gilly read out to Sam, or that Howland Reed could have came along and been like, hey, John, you're actually the son of Lyanna and Rhaegar. Sorry to burst your bubble about that whole Ned Stark's my father thing. I don't know. makes me think that the show writers didn't know what to do with Bran and decided to just throw him out. And I think that was just the big time wrong decision. I think that they should have had Bran come through with some kind of crazy magic shit, like working into a bunch of polar bears or a bunch of wolves, kind of like in Wheel of Time with Perrin and the wolves. I don't know. They should have had him do something to try and counter the giant fight that was going on, to try and even the scales. But instead, I mean, he just sat there and said, "Hey, I'm bait." So I don't know. That was kind of lame. Everyone thinks it's lame. But again, it's what we got, and it was still a really good episode, and there's still 3 episodes left, so it is possible that Bran does something that's actually relevant to the plot. I know it seems unlikely, but just hold out for it. It could happen, and I'm praying it does, because, that would be brutal if it didn't. Outside this plot, outside these points, like I said, great episode. Helped me really tense the whole way along, and I enjoyed it all the way through. Those last 5 minutes, they created a lot of questions, a lot of unanswered plot lines, that sort of, but still a great episode, and can't wait to see what comes out next. You guys stay tuned for my next video. It's gonna be on Cersei and why I hope that she's the ultimate winner of the Game of Thrones, and why she's actually way cooler, way more badass than all of you guys think she is. She's not some comic book villain, and I'm gonna prove it. All right, well, I'm signing out. Hope you guys have a good one. Be sure to tune in for next time. Peace.